talked about ACEs and how they impact the brain. And today we are going to talk about, we're going to review ACEs a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how they can be addressed in the school system, because like I said last time, that is a pretty good way to address them and fix things. So just a quick review. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. They're a type of complex trauma that occurs before a person is 18. They typically involve the primary caregiver in the home or some other parental figure in the home. And they usually are unpredictable, and this plays a big factor in how the trauma manifests in the behavior of the child. The types of trauma that children experience are any type of neglect, so emotional or physical, addiction of somebody in the home, abuse that's physical, psychological, or emotional or sexual, people in the home participating in any kind of criminal behavior that the child can witness and see, a divorce or separation of the parents, or mental illness in the home. And so to review the side effects, ACEs make learning and emotional regulation a lot harder. Children adapt to the constant threat level that they experience and the constant unpredictability at home. And this adaptation means that their fight, flight, or freeze response is way higher. It's triggered much easier than somebody who has not experienced this type of trauma. So this adaptation serves them really well at home, but it makes going to school and making friends with people a little bit harder because they don't have that emotional regulation, and they're so quick to assume that there's a threat. Typically there's not a lot of sense of safety or control in the home, and typically children with ACEs have learned that adults can't protect them, that adults can't provide them with a sense of safety, that their environment is not in control by adults or themselves, and they need to constantly be looking out for themselves and protecting themselves because nobody else is going to do it, which is not what you want for a very young child, but that's what happens a lot. And according to a study done by Plum et al., where they cite some other sources, this wasn't the primary purpose of their study, but they cite some other sources and make a hypothesis that seems very valid, that 2/3 of the American population are have experienced one or more ACE, and this is based off of a large sample size taken by another group doing a study. So extrapolating from that smaller sample size into the larger American population, you can estimate that 2/3 of the American population and 2/3 of children in school are experiencing one or more ACEs in their childhood. And so this is why we really want to address this in the public school system, because having this many people who are traumatized and who have troubles learning and interacting socially and have behavior problems as a result really impacts the school system, and also provides a perfect way to address a lot of the issues that these people face. And it reaches 90% of the children in the United States. So the school system is a really great way to address this problem, and not only that, but it provides a lot of relationships that are very important to students, and that is key to fixing the trauma that they experience, or not fixing the trauma, but helping them heal from the side effects and learning other coping mechanisms in other areas of life. And it's also important to note that it's not just students with behavior issues that are experiencing ACEs. It's not just the students who are acting out frequently. It's also the quiet students who might be dissociating, which is a lot less visible than wanting to fight or run away from something that's happening. So even if it seems like the population of children in school is lower, it could still potentially be very helpful to have a trauma-sensitive approach in place that teaches social emotional learning, because it will reach these children who aren't necessarily showing symptoms, or who might show symptoms later on in life, because these children can kind of slip through the cracks. It looks like they're succeeding, but they're really struggling a lot. So to talk about how to help these children deal with the emotional complications and behavioral complications that come from ACEs, we need to look at resilient children, because this is kind of the opposite of trauma. It's when you experience a source of trauma in your life and it makes you stronger rather than causing maladaptive behaviors. And so resilient children show a lot of traits in common that help them adapt to new challenges and new situations, which is something that children with ACEs struggle with. So these traits are strong relationship with a parent or other caregiver figure who acts as a sort of mentor in their life. Also good cognitive skills that can help them succeed in school or in social situations. Also the ability to regulate their emotions and behavior and attention. And all of these things are areas that people with ACEs struggle with. So we want to be able to increase resilience in people with ACEs and increase their abilities in these traits in order to help them succeed in school and other areas of their life. So there's a project put out by the, I'm gonna need to look at my notes for this. It's the Complex Trauma Task Force of the NCTSN, which is the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And the project that they put out is the Attachment, Self-Regulation, and Competency Project. And they have certain goals that they want to see children who are traumatized achieve in order to promote some of the traits that we see in resilient children. And these are build secure attachments, learn self-regulation, and increase competency in all areas of life. So academically, socially, things like that. And not just one area of academics, but multiple areas as well. And so one way that this can be accomplished is through social and emotional learning, or SEL, components in the classroom. They can help achieve these goals for children with ACEs. And the study I mentioned earlier, done by Plum et al., which I'll cite at the end of this video, they do a really good job of mentioning how this can be implemented using structures that are already in place for training teachers. They go into a lot of policy topics about how not to use a lot of extra funds that schools don't have in order to implement this learning, but still get this information across and make sure that people are well trained in how to use these techniques. So that's worth looking into if you are interested in implementing this in your school. So back to the social emotional learning curriculum and components that can be included in the classroom, what social emotional learning does is it seeks to increase the emotional literacy of children, improve their problem solving, build supportive and healthy relationships, and includes trauma toolkits that help children not only calm down from either hyper or hypoarousal, but helps them develop tools to deal with those things in the future. And trauma toolkits are actually really cool. You're supposed to put them in a safe place in the classroom, a place that's kind of isolated where a hyper or hypoaroused child can be by themselves. And it has various different sensory tools and toys in it that the children can experiment with and try and figure out what helps them to calm down. So this could be like a Rubik's Cube, or one of those balls with little spiky things all over it, or some silly putty or a stress ball, and they can kind of experiment with those things, and the sensory experience can help distract them and calm down that fight or flight response. And at the same time, they're learning, oh hey, I like this, I don't like this, this helps me feel good, this doesn't help me feel good, which is a really important tool when it comes to self-regulation and self-concept, which is something that is a problem in some people with ACEs. And I have some examples of exercises that can be included into various age groups in school. These come from edutopia.org. It's a really good resource for all sorts of social emotional learning curriculums and ideas. And I think there may be some discussion boards there as well, but it's a really good tool for educators if you're interested in including this in your curriculum or just incorporating it as part of your classroom. It's a really good resource to look at. And they talk about different ages and all sorts of great things like that. But so for the elementary school age group, one activity that I found that I thought was really cool was sharing acts of kindness. And so what this is, it can be a teacher prompted exercise where they pull one child aside and give them a specific act of kindness to do for another child. So this could be finding them at recess and asking them to come play with them, or it could be giving them a note about something nice that they did that day, or helping them to clean up or something like that. Just something nice that shows that they're thought about and cared for in the classroom. Or it could be anonymous post-it notes that children write and give to the teachers, and the teachers post on a board where children can look at them. So it'll say, Casey did this really nice thing today. She really helped clean up the block area, or that's preschool. That probably wouldn't be in a elementary school age class, but you get the idea, something nice like that. And all of these exercises are meant to build community and build relationships, because that is a core component of what helps people not only self-regulate, but have that healthy attachment and learn how to self-regulate and become competent in a lot of different areas. So for middle school, the activity that I found, there are a lot of activities for all of these age groups, but the one that I found that I really thought was cool was a group salute, where it's teacher prompted at the beginning or end of an activity, and it can either be like gratitude, where children say, hey, thanks for working on this with me, or thanks for contributing this to our discussion today, or it can be high fives or fist bumps or something, just kind of like be like, yeah, we did it, good job. And what's really interesting about this is in the edutopia.org article, they say that research is showing that for MBA teens who engage in the sort of like positive touch of just like a high five or a fist bump or something like that, pat on the shoulder, something that's really nonchalant, they actually improve their performance later in the year, showing that potentially small touch, positive touch in that way can help in bonding and creating stronger community ties. This is something that you can't really force, because some children with trauma could be very touch sensitive, so that's something that you need to be aware of, but it is a really interesting finding. And then moving on to high school, there were two really interesting activities that I found, so I included both of those. One is appreciation, apology, aha, which is where everybody in the class kind of gathers around in a circle and they share an appreciation, an apology, or an aha moment. So if they want to thank a classmate for doing something particularly nice or showing them something like that, they can say that then. If they have an apology, they can state that to the group, and it doesn't have to be hey, so-and-so, I'm really sorry that I didn't see you at lunch, want to sit with me, I realized that later. It can just be, I feel like I didn't include somebody in the class today and I should have, and I'm really sorry for that. So it can be kind of anonymous in that way. It doesn't have to call somebody out for the apology. It can just be taking ownership of what you did and leaving it at that, which I think is a really useful skill. And the aha moment can be some moment of insight from that day, which can be an emotional insight or it could be a learning insight. And what's really cool about this activity is it lets students kind of tailor it to their own comfort level in that community, and whatever level of vulnerability they're comfortable with, they can just use that. And it allows for increasing levels of comfort as the year goes on, which is also really nice if it's a constant part of the curriculum. And then the last activity that I found that I thought was really kind of fun was what's called a snowball toss. So you have students, this is for high school again, you could maybe do it with other ages too, but I think it's a little bit high school appropriate. So you have students take a piece of paper and anonymously write down one stressor that's happening in their life. So they're behind on their homework, they're upset at their parent or something like that, and so they write that down, and then they crumple up the piece of paper and they toss it, and it's like a snowball fight. They get to kind of, you know, run around the room a little bit, scream and be loud, throw the snowballs, and then at the end, when the teacher calls enough, they can, everybody picks up a piece of paper that's not theirs, and they stand around in a circle and everybody reads one of the pieces of paper. And so it's nice because it's kind of kinesthetic, it gets things moving, it's a fun activity that you can kind of laugh and bond over, but then also the talking about it at the end, the sharing the stressors in an anonymous way, leads to really deep discussions, or it can, about stress and how to deal with certain stressors, and just a kind of increased compassion for classmates and what they might be going through in their life. Even if you don't know exactly who wrote it, you know that that's the struggle that's happening in the class right now, which is a really nice way to increase intimacy in a friendly sort of way without the oversharing or fear that can often accompany that. I think it could create a very nice bond in the classroom. And that's it. That's all I have for techniques, but do check out those resources that I mentioned. They can give you a lot more information. And if you are a teacher interested in including social emotional learning in your classroom, I would highly encourage it, and I would highly encourage you to read the study by Plum et al. That I will cite at the end, because that gives a really good way to potentially talk to your administration about it and include it as a school-wide thing, which can also be really important. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back another time with another topic, and I hope to hear from you guys down in the comments below. Thanks so much.